Hey guys, and welcome back. This is James, and today we're doing something very different, as I wanted to show you the build process of a leather messenger bag. I've been doing leather work for about 5 months now, and I feel quite confident with the limited amount of skill I have, and I wanted to show you this as I really like the result, and I thought it'd be interesting to share with you this process and the build in general. So I've started off by grabbing a very nice piece of Veg-tan leather. And for those of you who do not know what that is, that means it's going to be some very good quality, long-lasting leather. So it's a bit more expensive than other types of leather, but hopefully this is worthwhile. These are all the different things I'll be using, including Fiebing's oil dye in walnut, as well as Neatsfoot pure, 100% pure Neatsfoot oil there. I'll try and use as little glue as possible. I will have to use some. We'll talk about that later. First things first is dyeing it, and this is always a very fun process. It was a 30-hour build, so I am going to speed things up. I do apologize for my camera focusing in and out here. It will be placed on manual later, so that won't be an issue after a while. The leather I'm using is 2.3 millimeters thick here, you can see, except for the straps. The straps are 3 millimeter thick straps. I could have done it with slightly thinner leather, but I decided to go with this to make it nice and durable. I do think in the future, though, I will be going with thinner leather indeed, especially for the sides. The front and back could be nice and sturdy, but the sides need to be thinner. For the Americans out there, 2.3 millimeter thick leather is just under 6 ounces, I believe, and I still don't understand why. It's, we calculate thickness in millimeters here, and you calculate thickness in weight. I don't know, whatever. I guess it's the weight of the leather per inch or something like that. But for you guys, yeah, it is just under 6 ounces of leather, or per thickness of leather. I don't know, whatever. As you can see, I decided to go for the last coat of my finish here with the dyeing, with a mixture of Neatsfoot oil with a few drops only of the dye. It is, again, Fiebing's walnut dye. And as you can see, this enables me to get a really nice finish at the end, very natural looking. So it's not perfect by far in terms of dyeing goes. Some people like it to be absolutely homogeneous all the way through. I really like to leave the leather untreated before the dyeing process in order to get all the extra little bits and marks and whatever, the use out of the leather. Make sure that it shows. I don't like perfect color on leather. For some reason, I prefer having it like this. Makes it a bit more natural, a bit more lived in. It gives it a lived in feel. At this point, cutting up the leather is a very stressful process, because if you've made a mistake in your measurements, well, this could basically ruin the whole piece, and you'd have to buy more leather. It's about 80 euros worth of leather or something like that, maybe a bit less here. And I didn't want to screw it up. Luckily, though, I am quite happy with the way things turned out. You'll notice that I have got some very big pieces for the bottom and the front, and that's because I want it as a messenger bag. Now, for those of you who do not know what a messenger bag is, it is a bag that is actually much deeper than others, because instead of having a flap at the top of it, you actually fold over the whole bag onto itself in order to create a seal, making sure that things can't get in, especially water. And that's what you call a messenger bag. I wanted something similar here. I didn't want to fold it completely, but I did want the top of it to be foldable or fold down, so I've got a lot of leather there. And that is a design choice that it's not the most practical. I've used the bag 1 day now, so I know, which is not much, I have to admit, but still, it's given me a feel for it, and I do admit this is not a practical bag as far as using it on a day-to-day basis goes, simply because it is so deep and very stiff. Coming back to how stiff the leather is, this is now the 3 millimeter bands for the shoulders here. Again, this was something I decided to go for, 3 millimeters. I felt like, if I'm doubling it up, that's 6 millimeters. That should give you very nice, comfortable shoulder bands. Well, yes, they are comfortable, but as you will see in a minute, there are some difficulties that come with having such thick leather bands. I have dyed these, I have also prepared the edges, and this is where things get interesting. At this point, I've spent about maybe 4 hours on my work here, and I start making the holes. So I'm preparing the holes for the stitching, as of course I won't be able to stitch straight through, 6mm thick leather, so that's going to have to be punched first. The holes are going to have to be punched, and as you can see, I'm having a tremendous amount of trouble here getting those punched in. Actually, punching them in is easy. It's getting the tools out. They just wouldn't come out. Eventually, I do manage to get it out, but it was a struggle, and for about half an hour, I was a bit panicky, thinking, "Oh my god, I'm never going to finish this." Eventually, I switched from my 6-pronged or 7-pronged tool, which you can see on the left right now, to a 2-pronged tool, going for one hole at a time. It took me, I don't know, I can't remember how many hours. I think each strap, by the time I'd made the holes and sewed the strap, I think each strap was about 4 or 6 hours work per strap. It was ridiculous how much time these straps took me, and I have to admit, if I were going to do this again, I would probably just use either much thinner straps of leather, either not double up the leather and not stitch the straps, because I feel like I'm spending so much time doing this. However, the end result is not too shabby. I'm quite happy with it. The top part is nice and straight, or straight enough, whereas the bottom part goes a bit wonky at times because hitting through so much leather is not an exact science and is not very easy, I have to admit. But I'm quite happy with the results, so we'll be moving on to the next part. And for those of you who do know leather, the next part is going to be sanding. If you think you spent a long time sewing, you have no idea how long you could spend sanding it to make it properly, to do it properly. I did not spend as long as I should probably, but I did what I felt was necessary at this point. Once it's sanded, make sure it's dyed again, get those edges really nice, and I will be going for, I'm using gum trag, or some kind of Arabic gum here, and this does two things. First of all, it enables me to burnish it really nicely, and to burnish is a process, you'll see me doing in a second, there I'm doing it now, is a process with which you you will rub a piece of cloth, or in this case wood, against the edge to warm up, to burn the edges very, very slightly, and this helps the keratin in the leather as well as the gum that you've just placed onto it bind up and really create a very nice, strong, hard, glossy finish, as you can see right now. So it looks glossy, it's not wet at all. That is a really nice hard finish that should last ages. I'm now working on the sides of the bag, and I want the sides to sort of collapse inwards. I don't know if you can imagine what that means, but basically I didn't want them to sort of bow out. I didn't want the sides to go all over the place, and I still wanted to be able to stuff the bag if I needed to, which meant that I decided that I was going to sew or cut down the middle of these sides and sew them inwards, making sure that the bag could not go anywhere else than inwards, and enabling me to then fold it properly and close it properly. I've found that the first glass I was using didn't work, the second glass I was using didn't work, so eventually, if the two first ones don't use, just go for a pint glass. If in doubt, grab a pint. Right now I am scribing my edges. This will basically be the final shape of my bag, because these are the edges to the sides of my bag, and these will determine what shape, how the squareness of the bottom part of the bag will be. I'm now punching holes here. These will be the start of my cuts. As you probably can imagine, if you're going to put stress on two pieces of leather and the stress comes down to a point, you want that point to be a slight hole and not just a pinpoint. Simply because when putting stress, the larger the hole, the larger the area of the stress is going to be shared around, which is why I did punch a hole there, and that will enable me, as you can see right now, to have a piece of leather that should, in theory, take more damage in the long term without breaking. More stress. Once that is done, once this is all cut, I can then start scribing down where my holes will be. This is something I didn't show you in the previous step, but this is essential to getting very nice straight lines. When you're going to be stitching two things together, I strongly advise you have a guide, and this was my guide that I was using to punch the holes. FYI, I was guiding myself 3.5 millimeters away from the side. I do apologize again for people who don't use the metric system. It's not your fault. But 3.5 millimeters gave me a very nice edge, basically, a very nice distance on the edge. And watching the oil come on is so satisfying. It just brings out the color. Well, it deepens, darkens the color very nicely, and this is still quite wet, and I wanted it this way. I wanted these two areas to be very wet because they're going to be taking on such stress before and while I'll be sewing it. Before that, though, I have to make sure that all my edges are nicely done, because these are edges I will not have access to once the bag is stitched, so this is when I need to make sure that they are properly prepared, dyed and burnished before we do anything else. And again, you can see the process here of burnishing. Make sure you've got a clean edge, dye it, place a bit of gum or Arabic gum or whatever you're using, trag. There were so many different options out there. Some people use saddle soap for this. Find your own option, test it out. This is what works for me. This may not be what works for you. Again, it also depends on the type of leather you're using. This works for me because I'm using Veg-tan. Make sure you look up, find other people who are using the similar products as you and find out how they do it in order to find your own process. Again, making sure the edges are ready before you start assembling is very important, because some of these edges you won't have access to, and this is the case for this one. This is going to be the bottom edge, right at the bottom of the bag, between the two pieces, the front and back piece, and this is This is the first of only 2 times where I'll be using glue in this project. I tried to avoid it because I like the idea of not having it. Good or bad idea, I don't know, I'll let you judge about that. But I decided to glue the bottom and the top parts together just to make sure they didn't move, to give it more strength in the long run. And finally going to punch down the holes and sew the top and bottom pieces. I've got a lot of material here, and this was, again, it wasn't hard, but it was awkward as a process. I'm now making the the bottom strap here. I have a very interesting system which we'll be looking at later on, but for the bottom strap, because I knew that it had to be sewn on to the bottom of the bag and that I wouldn't have access to that area of the bag later on in the build, it had to go on now. As you can see, I've already got the front pocket on there, so that's the flap that is wobbling around just beneath my left hand, and this is where my loop will go. I have something I like to do. I like to attach my flip-flops to the bottom of bags I'm using when I'm traveling. I have a hook which I just hook onto the bottom of a bag, and I have my flip-flops on it, which means I've got flip-flops all over the place, but it does mean that this is designed like this. It's not a handle, it's at the bottom of the bag, and this is designed to be loose in order to be able to have things attached to it. It looks very loose when it's flat like that, but trust me, once the bag is fully sewn together, it will look absolutely perfect and absolutely normal. I'm now going, adding on the back straps to the bag. Again, this was a very painstaking process, trying to figure out where exactly they would go, making the holes, and then sewing through the 6mm of strap plus 2.3mm of bag was very, very long as well. Finally, we can start assembling the bag, adding in the first side that will show me what the bag is going to look like in the end. I am finding my marks once more and going to be placing those holes. Getting ready to stitch, again, is going to be very important. Take your time for every single step. That's probably the number one rule about doing something right. Take your time. Now, I decided not to glue here. It's going to mean that I won't have anything stopping my edges from being absolutely perfect, but it will also mean that stitching is going to be tough. It's going to be very slow. Every time I'm going to be searching for my holes, every single flap, every single extra layer is going to mean extra difficulty. And this is a process, stitching the 2 sides is probably the longest process of the whole bag making, if you don't really count the shoulder pads, which were stupidly hard to make as well. But this, despite being very slow, this is the most rewarding part of the process, because this is when you finally get to see what your choices will end up looking. And I was very, very satisfied. Just one half of the bag is sewed up there, just one flap. And you can see why I wanted to sew that side inwards. This gives me the extra ability of being able to fold it over. And once I'm happy with that, I can stitch in the second side. This again took me quite a long time. Don't forget, I did mention this. It is a 30-hour build total, give or take, time spent making coffee and tea and whatever. But 30 hours more or less. I tried to time myself, and I don't think I rushed it. I took my time. I did evenings, weekends, whatnot, to get this done. I'm very satisfied with the result. At this point, I decided to do, the finishing touches, so front of the bag, adding leather to the flap at the top. And while this is happening, I just wanted to talk about one thing very briefly, again, the leather. So right at the start of the video, I mentioned it was 2.3mm thick leather, which means that with the side and the front pocket, or the bottom of the bag, at some areas there are 3 layers of 2.3mm thick leather, which is 6.9mm if my math is correct. And that is too much. I mean, I love it. I love the rigidity, the strength that this gives my bag, but I do not think I would do this again with such proportions, because it really was a pain, and I think that you could definitely do something just as good, if not better, with half the thickness of leather. We're having a quick look at the strap attachment, which was quite interesting here actually. This is this is going to go on top of my bag, and this will enable me to close it. And I decided to use that despite it being an industrial grade hook. I decided to use it because the bag in itself was relatively simple in design, so I thought that this would be a slight accent piece, and I'm very happy with the result. My bag is now fully stitched up. It's nearly ready. So close to being ready. The last thing I need now is to get my edges right. As you can see, I go down with a bevel there, make sure that the edges are nice and round. Again, sanding, sanding, sanding. You cannot spend too long sanding properly. Make sure you don't scratch the leather, and sand. Burnishing once more the edges is such a satisfying process, because even though it's very physical, you're actually pressing down very hard on that leather and pushing it as fast as you can go to really warm up the leather. It's very satisfying. As you can see, the left-hand side and the right-hand side are very different right now, because I've done the right-hand side, and as I'm doing the left-hand side, you can see it get really shiny and really nice looking. And you do not underestimate the importance of finishing edges, the small details. That is what the people are going to see when they look at your work. Do not underestimate that. Finally, attaching on the top strap and locking mechanism of the bag, we will finally be able to have a look at what it looks like once the bag is closed any second now. Again, I waited here. I didn't want to I could have done it the same night I finished the edges. I actually waited just to be relaxed and not to rush the process. The back is going on. I made sure this would also double up as a handle for my bag, as I didn't want to add anything more to it. I felt that this was more than sufficient to make the bag nice and simple, really functional, really aesthetically very, very pleasing for me. One last coat of neatsfoot oil goes on just to clean up the bag and to protect it once more. Add in a bit of oil that will make sure that water doesn't get in as easily, and just to shine it up. And you can see how it darkens it very slightly. It darkens leather very slightly, but it just looks so good right now. And at this point I was just ecstatic. I couldn't wait to actually start stuffing the bag full of stuff and see what it would actually look like. Final test, and you can see how that opens and closes. I can close it very fast now. And at this point, I am very, very happy. I'm even playing around with the camera, you can see, which is something I haven't done so far. The bag is complete. There is one tiny little added touch, which I will show you any second now, that I will add to the front of the mechanism there, and that is going to be a small leather tab. That will enable you to open the bag. There you go, you can see the leather tab. And that is the bag done. And overall, I'm very happy with this build. It was very, very long. It taught me a lot about patience. I did use leather that was probably too thick, but I really, really love this bag. So do feel free to share any thoughts and comments that you may have with me. I would love to hear your feedback on this, and hopefully you've enjoyed. And in any case, I've loved giving you this, showing you this, and I shall see you next time for some more leatherwork.